Good Friday. It's not Good Friday though, but good happy Friday to everyone. Welcome to the vlog for January 20th, 2023. I am Mr. Whitehouse. How's it going? Today we're going to talk about Lord Byron, read a couple poems by him and talk about that. I hope that you have had a good day. I hope that if it is a Friday for you when you're watching this, you have had or will have a good weekend. I hope it is full of rest and fun things and cool stuff. Let's get through them because there's two poems to cover and I want to make sure we have time to cover them both. Our bell ringer for the day was Fix It Friday. So take out the trash mom order before the dog knocks over the can. What is this missing? Right? What's this lovely sentence missing? Well, unless you're making a comment on what mom orders, which you could be. Mom might order some trash. Like if she's got a problem and she's spending too much on Amazon, then which we all do, okay? It's not just moms. Except mine's thrift books. But in any case, in if that is the case, then you're fine. But usually you want this to be separated by quotations and commas. Also, Jordan, get those straws out of your nose, mom shouted. We have a problem with the your, it's the wrong your, and we also need Jordan to be separated so that Jordan knows we are talking to them. We also need some quotation marks there as well. We don't capitalize the be and before because it is happening in the middle of the sentence. So just make sure that you know that. So today we're talking about Lord Byron and romantic heroes. Romantic heroes is any main character of a story that they don't have to be like a lover, right? A romantic hero can be any hero in a story or main protagonist of a story that follows emotion over reason, emotion over logic, okay? Um that maybe acts impulsively, it breaks the rules or the strictures of the context of the time that they are in. Lord Byron was that and wrote about that, so he's kind of a double dip. We talk about him in both ways. He was born George Gordon. I might have misspelled that last name now that I think about it. Raised by his mother, his parents divorced when he was very, very young. When he's in like his, early adulthood, we're talking like 18, 19, I think, he inherits an estate from an uncle and becomes a lord. Now, what what do you do with an estate once you get an estate, right? He becomes a lord. He speaks out though against the aristocracy that he was a part of. He was one of our first celebrities. He um engaged in drinking and debts and affairs and partying very publicly and didn't really care about what the rules of the time said that he was supposed to do. He kind of wanders around the world, travels around. In 1823, he finds Greece's independence, his cause, and helps fight for their independence from the Turks and the Ottoman Empire. In 1824, he gets sick on one of those voyages and dies at the age of 36. He is like his characters because he lives a short, bright, fantastic life that ends too soon. He is idealistic in love and nature and social behavior. He is impulsive, and he is considered, along with Coleridge and Wordsworth, who we've already read in this unit, one of the leaders of the English Romantic movement. We're going to look at two poems today. The first, When We Two Parted, is this kind of very small, reflective poem about loss, about grief. And we have to kind of fill in the gaps. Darkness is more of a narrative that focuses on this kind of post-apocalyptic scene and asks, what if this had happened? What would happen to the world? We're not going to read those two poems, but I'm going to link to them so you can read them, but I am going to analyze them for you just for the sake of time. So When We Two Parted works as this conversation, again, kind of with you and the reader, and we have to fill in some of the gaps here. So we look at it. This one's short. I'll read through it real quick. When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken hearted to sever for years. Pale grew thy cheek and cold colder thy kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning, the sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken and share in its shame. They name thee before me, a knell to my ear. A shudder comes o'er me. Why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met, in silence I grieve, that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears. So we have an ABABCDCD rhyme scheme. Parted, hearted, tears, years, so on and so forth. 4 stanzas, 8 lines, easy meter, easy for us to understand. Again, simple, easy to read, easy for us to understand as lay people of the 1800s who this is meant for. But we can already tell from our tone words: sorrow, grief, shame, cold, silence, tears, um, shudder, a death, a knell, which is like a ringing, a bad noise. All of these things put together know we are talking about a sorrowful, sad person. So what happens in this poem is it's the breaking of a relationship. We can tell that from the start, right? When we two parted. It's two people who have left. This is not brain surgery here. But what ends up happening as we read, we find that he is talking, the speaker of the poem is talking to someone who they loved, who they have lost, and that they are shameful about the relationship. And we don't quite know why at first. And then we realize that it was an affair. They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue thee, too deeply to tell. They he's grieving this relationship, but he's grieving it in private. He can't tell anyone that he's sad about this relationship because it was a secret affair. In secret where we met, in silence I grieve. So it's loss of a relationship, loss of love, but also isolation, which Byron knew all too well. So this is full of regret and shame. And Byron knew of isolation. He owned property, he was famous, he probably had all these friends, but he was never really able to settle down, and he kind of lived this nomadic lifestyle almost. But we have all the romantic elements. We have passion over reason. We have feeling your emotions and on the outside, right? Which we talked about when we talked about Kubla Khan. Writing for everyone, writing about really common things. We've all had relationships end, even if they're just friendships, even if they're family relationships. We've all had relationships end. We can all relate to this. And we look at the individual over a big society. We look at the small versus the big. Um, One thing that is interesting, imagination over reason. No one gets into an affair after like filling out a spreadsheet and deciding it's a good idea. It's passion, it's emotion that drives us. Darkness, the second poem that we're reading for this lesson, is much darker. Before all of your Hunger Games and The Road and Maze Runner and all these post-apocalyptic stories that seemed to fill our mid 2000s YA literature, we had things like this. This is based on a real event. In 1850, an Indonesian volcano erupted, and it basically sent Europe and Asia weather into chaos. Crops died, people died. There was snow in the middle of summer. It was absolute mayhem because of this volcano. If you look up the year without summer, you will see firsthand accounts, meteorological accounts of what happened during this time period. I'll link to the poem in the show notes just because we don't have time to read it all necessarily, but it goes through this really interesting scenario. It has no structure, it has no rhyme scheme, it's told in blank verse. It's more told like a story asking, what if the sun went out? What would happen to humanity? Now in 2023, we'd be able to survive a little bit longer. It wouldn't be as chaotic if the sun went out. Here in like developed countries, non-developed countries would be screwed. There's just no way around it. But he details people would go into madness. They would start burning palaces for light. Um, People would start dying left and right. Birds wouldn't know what to do. The waves would stop crashing. I mean, it really goes into all of the what ifs of this idea. But one thing I love about this poem is how the romantics were all about that, like the idea of focusing on the individual. This poem does both. It starts off with this huge narrative talking about the universe and the world and what happens when the sun goes out. And then Earth. We just focus on Earth and the people and the living things on Earth. And then it focuses on one dog that, despite the cannibalistic nature of everything that's gone around and people eating people for survival and destroying each other, we have this dog that stays by its owner and is loyal and sticks around until it then dies. And then we have these two survivors who were sworn enemies, but they didn't know it until they use all of their effort and resources and teamwork to light this tiny little fire, and it lights, and then they also die. Once, because they see each other and they get scared by the sight of each other and they die. And then we zoom back out. So we had gone huge, and then we zoom in on this dog and then these two people and then Earth again. And again, the ship stops sailing and the waves stop crashing, and then the universe as a whole at the end of it. So it really focuses on both. We have loss in both of these poems. The first one's loss of a relationship. Now we have loss of desire and achievement and sanity and empathy and friendship and dignity, all of those things. This is an example of dark romanticism. So we can take the romantic ideals of imagination and love and being in touch with your emotions and being in touch with nature and the individual over society, and we can twist them into something pretty dark, because we can talk about nature. The dark romantics, like these poems here, talked about nature in a negative way. They talked about how humans can be evil and lack empathy and optimism about the future. They talked about fear and guilt and gloom and morbid subjects. These are not fun poems for us on a Friday to go through, but they're important for us to go through. They're both about intense, intense sorrow. Um, Two articles are up online for you to do. Article of the week 2 is going to get zeroed out today, so make sure you've done it. There is no, don't forget, there is a 1.06 quiz. Make sure you watch these, like, subscribe, comment on them, um, and add questions for me to answer in a future AMA episode. I had 3 questions. I had 2 questions hanging out, and they were just like, I don't have any questions. That doesn't help me. I need questions, even if they're dumb questions. I need questions for me to answer in a future video. So go to the comments down below, go to a thread. Have a wonderful weekend, y'all, and I will see you on Monday.